There have been one or two world leaders. I'm thinking particularly of John Howard, the former Prime Minister of Australia, who gave a very, very clear message, and people like the Queen of Denmark, I think, have given the same message. They basically said, look, if you're going to live here as Australians, as Danes, you're welcome. You're welcome as Muslims or as any minority community of faith, but you've got to toe the line. You've got to behave according to the rules of our society. You've got to sign up to the basic laws and rules and culture of this society, which is one law for all, no extremism, no violence. Otherwise, goodbye. Now, in Britain, we flinch from that. We say, oh, that's terribly racist. But unless you give that very strong signal and back it up and uphold the sort of dividing line between, you know, where your laws and customs are absolute and everybody has to adhere to that as a kind of overarching cultural umbrella to which all subscribe, unless you actually show that you're prepared to do that and prepared to defend your culture, you can't defend it. And we have this terrible paradox. Liberal thinking says it is racist to hold one culture or one way of thinking as superior to any other. Now, what follows from that inescapably is the paradox that a liberal society must die. Because a liberal society, by its own liberal tenets, says we cannot uphold liberal ideals as superior to any other. So we can't uphold equality of women, freedom of speech, whatever it is, over people who oppose this because that's racist. Okay, if that is so, then a liberal society says goodbye to itself. Because if you can't uphold it over any other, because your liberal ideals are telling you can't uphold it, then by definition the liberal society has to give way to the strong man in the room who is using intimidation, threats of murder, the kind of intimidation and manipulation that we see on the streets of London that we've just seen an example of.
I do want to talk about the pro-Islamist left because I do think it's very important, though there's so many issues that are going to remain unanswered. But anyway, I think with the pro-Islamist left, the problem primarily is that they also see my enemy's enemy as my friend, and because they perceive the Islamic movement to be anti-imperialist, they defend it irrespective of what these movements and states do. And in a sense, it's sort of, if you look at it, it's sort of an old anti-colonial movement. It sides with the colonies no matter what happens, and it's a sort of patronizing Eurocentric view of the colonies, and it's usually siding with the ruling elite of those colonies. So it doesn't matter how many people are massacred by Ahmadinejad, they'll defend Ahmadinejad and the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I've got personal experience with this in the Stop the War Coalition. When the Twin Towers happened, the bombing, we went to the Stop the War Coalition meetings, and you know, one of the arguments we had is you've got to condemn Islamic terrorism. They refused to do it. And we've had actually our activists who've got banners of against human rights violations in Iran, their banners grabbed off them and thrown out of the protest, you know, whereas you've got banners of the Islamic Republic of Iran's flag, we are all Hezbollah, we are all Hezbollah, you know, you've got lesbian women carrying that banner, you know, and you're like, you wouldn't be alive under Hezbollah's rule, you know. And, you know, at one protest, I stopped going to them because every woman veiled in respect for Muslim women. Well, you know, a lot of women under Islamic laws are fighting tooth and nail not to be veiled. They're having acid thrown in their faces and they're resisting. And you're telling us in London to veil in solidarity with the Palestinian women or the Iraqi women. There are a lot of these sorts of examples. United Against Fascism, we had a rally against Sharia law in front of Downing Street. Al-Muhajirun did a counter-demonstration against us. United Against Fascism led a rally against the EDL, who had also come for a counter-demonstration, and joined Al-Muhajirun. Come on! How can you be anti-fascist and join the Islamic fascists? Their response, there's no such thing as Islamic fascism, and that's the problem. The problem is that they don't see the fact that there are women, there are gays, there are atheists, free thinkers, socialists, left, right, human beings who are being smashed by this movement. And who are struggling and resisting it day in and day out, and they're siding with the oppressor. They're siding with the oppressor. So I think, especially as I'm on the left, I feel such a betrayal from this movement. And you know, that they're siding with Islamism, they're taking Islamic side at our expense, at the expense of people's rights. I just want to say one thing, though, that we're not talking about people, and that's why I think there's some dishonesty going on in these debates, because we're not talking about your neighbor who's anti-immigrant. As the head of the One Law for All campaign that has gathered, you know, 27,000 supporters in a very short time, and that has been challenging the Islamic movement day in and day out, I have a responsibility to target and bring light to and expose not just Islamism, but also the far right that is hijacking that issue in order to attack Muslims, other citizens in this country. A movement that doesn't give a damn about the stoning of Sakina Mohammadi Ashtiani. That Muslim bitch deserves to die. Those are the sorts of emails you get from them. Okay, so I have a responsibility. I'm not talking about individuals. Your neighbor might be anti-immigrant. I don't care. But when you have a movement that is organizing people, bringing football hooligans into the street, I have a right to attack them and condemn them. That is my job as an activist. And just as they have a right to speak, I have a right to speak. And I won't stop speaking about this. I think it's important. We have to distinguish who our enemies are, because we will not win if you have the far right taking over the debate. The governments refuse to decide this. The vast majority of people are anti-Islam, but they're not racist. They have to see a non-racist, anti-racist alternative to fighting Islamism, and we are that alternative. And that's why I think it's important. This seminar is one of many seminars, conferences, rallies we've had, but this issue is one that we've been grappling with and felt we needed to focus on this. So maybe you think we're not dealing with all the issues, but the reason for this is because this needs to be discussed and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.